Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Asia Centre's Town Hall entitled Timor-Leste, Internet Freedoms Under Threat. This webinar is a preliminary announcement of the findings undertaken by Asia Centre through its research on the state of internet freedoms in Timor-Leste. This research is done in the context of other ongoing research looking at Southeast Asia as a whole. And today's discussion will place Timor-Leste in the context of Southeast Asia. So very happy to have you all here. Before I begin, next, we are on social media. This event is currently being live streamed via Asia Centre's Facebook page. So we would be very happy and grateful if you could also share that link to your friends so we can have an extended reach. We are well placed in social media, so we invite you to follow us on LinkedIn and other social media handles. Next. Some quick rules. For all of us who have been attending webinars in the last year or so, you are placed on mute upon entry. Your video is permanently disabled. This is to ensure good bandwidth. Please feel free to send your responses, questions, queries, reactions through the chat box. You may also use the Zoom function or the raise hand function of the webinar. Also do look out for other updates from the Secretariat here in Bangkok. Thank you. There's a lot of text in front, but I would like to just summarize the key point. And the key question to ask is really, where is Timor-Leste heading in its pursuit for internet connectivity in the context of Southeast Asia? After all, Southeast Asia is a community of authoritarian regimes where internet freedoms are not in a very, very good position. Given developments in Timor, good developments, struggling to some extent, especially in terms of internet connectivity and also its affordability. The rise in the use of internet for expression, especially political expression, that involves also critical discourse on laws, policies, often, making reference to individuals in government or beyond. And the response of trying to manage this criticism through the introduction of new laws. So what is the way forward? And is the way forward something that is quite similar to what's happening in Southeast Asia? Next. So to put things into context, please look at the yellow column or row. Timor-Leste, based on available public figures, is 1.3 million, where you have 44% online with a social media penetration of 33%. I have highlighted two countries that are also below 50% of internet penetration. So first is Laos at 48.4%, Myanmar, which has been very much in the news, at 43%. You will see for social media penetration in Laos, that's about 49%. And in Myanmar, it's 10% higher at 53% compared to internet penetration, simply because their mobile phone connectivity is much higher and social media is connected through mobile phones. I want to position these two countries that have internet penetration below 50% and compare it to developments in Timor-Leste. In both this country, the level of internet control has been quite extreme, more so in Myanmar, with the internet shutdown and also throttling of internet speed. So what we need to ask is, as Timor progresses through its connectivity and affordability, would these similar situations also arise for Timor-Leste? Would Timor-Leste, known to be a free environment in many aspects, when it joins the community of Southeast Asian nation, would it use its unique political identity of freedom if the trajectory of control is already signposted from developments in many, many countries in Southeast Asia, including countries that have internet penetration below 50%? So where are freedoms? How can we understand Timor-Leste's freedom index? When we speak of freedom of expression, broadly, three variables come together: academic freedom, press freedom, internet freedom. These are a cluster of freedoms that give rise collectively to freedom of expression. And these individual freedoms correlate, which means if you tend to be high on the freedom index in one category, chances are it broadly correlates with freedoms in other category. So let's look at Timor. Timor is right at the top in good ranking in terms of academic freedom. This is from the Global Policy Index. It's at the top in relation to Southeast Asia. It's at the top when it comes to press freedom in relation to Southeast Asia. This is through the Reporters Without Borders ranking. And finally, internet freedoms from Freedom House. Now, there are no rankings, no information available from the latest report on Timor-Leste and Brunei, which is also a bit of a challenge because one of the things about Timor is to have better data. But we can extrapolate that internet freedoms for Timor-Leste is quite high, even though we don't have an opportunity to refer to the Freedom House Index, but with conversation with friends in Timor clearly indicate the freedoms are there. And we can discuss the details as we go along. Next. But at what price? So if we look at the cost, internet cost for 10 gigabyte mobile data across the region, we can see Timor-Leste is right there on the top. Affordability is an issue. Timor is just one step, $1 below Brunei. And these are in US dollars. But you can see the gross national income disparity is way, way lower when you compare to Brunei. If you look at Singapore, which is somewhere in the middle, that same data package only costs $7.60 when the gross national income is 92,000. Now, of course, there are problems with gross national income because if your elites occupy most of the financial benefit and it's equalized across the population, it may give the wrong impression about who's got the money. But nevertheless, just in terms of broad comparison, we can see where Timor-Leste is, and this is something that, needs to be brought down if we want to ensure more affordable access. Next. Well, part of the problem with the cost is also the connectivity. We often hear friends in Timor telling us about the stability of the internet. Just to wrap this up, key challenges is really the infrastructure of internet connectivity. Where the discussion stands now is the approval to connect with the Australian network that was reached in November 2020 by the government on the back of a previous option that was aborted in 2018, connecting to the Indonesian infrastructure. These are the latest information we have. We are happy to receive updates from colleagues who are on the call, where we expect 40 to 60 million US dollars to be spent in building this infrastructure so that internet can be more stable and more accessible to more people in Timor. Another situation to consider is really who owns the internet company. So here we see the different companies, and of importance and perhaps concern is the role of the Vietnam Ministry of Defense and its ownership of 47% of the telco, and one of the telcos in Timor. Now, it is also important to note the Vietnam Ministry of Defense, same company, is also co-owner of one of the major telecoms operator in Myanmar in partnership with the Myanmar military. And we know also what has happened in Myanmar in terms of the internet shutdowns and the throttling of internet speed. So I think it's important to reflect on who are the likely owners, which also speaks to issues of control and censorship moving forward. Here, I will signpost a very, very interesting development in the role of internet control. We are often familiar about the use of laws, fake news laws, cybercrime laws, defamation laws to control content over the internet. This we know, and this has been in much discussion, which is one of the discussion going on in Timor. However, what is interesting is also infrastructural control. And it's currently very vividly being played out in Myanmar. And also to some extent, we have seen similar incidents in situation related to Papua. So one needs to reflect on who controls the internet gateway. Similar developments are also happening in Cambodia, where the Cambodian government has fast-tracked the implementation of the internet gateway. So something to think about moving forward. Next. So this is the landscape as available in public data about internet and its usage in Timor. What we note is it has been increasing. Mobile phone connectivity has been increasing as well. And we can expect that internet penetration will continue to grow in terms of take-up with increased affordability and connectivity as efforts currently being taken clearly signpost the pathway. What one has to be concerned is as connectivity and affordability increases, whether restriction will also increase in tandem. It's also important to reflect on the users. We weren't able to find online the latest data in terms of usage by the youth population. We were able to pull out some numbers from 2006, but in short, the volume of people using the internet among the young still remains fairly low compared to other parts of the region. where young people tend to be the largest number of users. But however, this is data that's 5 years old, and one of the challenges in being effective in Timor in terms of understanding usage and planning is to get good data on usage. We can see also social media is very popular. There's a clear indication women are very much active users of social media, which then brings into the question of online harassment and gender abuse and related to online activity. Next. So we would like to sort of put out a poll now to state the obvious. Should there be increased concern for young women, increased protection for young girls and women against online sexual harassment? We wanted to just put out this poll here just to make a point and draw attention to this very, very important concern. And we just wanted to have a little break in the narrative and just get you to interact to our first poll. We have a couple of more polls around law and data protection down the track. So thank you very much for all of you there for engaging on this very important poll. As your answers come in, I can see that almost 100% of the people who participated in the poll say that it is important to increase protection for young girls against online sexual harassment. And this is an important recommendation that we make in the report. Next, moving along. I also would like to draw your attention to the international human rights mechanism that Timor is part of. I want to bring special attention to the upcoming third cycle of Timor-Leste. A reminder to all friends and colleagues who are actively involved in the civic space that stakeholder submission is 15 July. And the review will take place in October. We have a date of 1st October. And it's a good time to make a submission. Asia Center, drawing from this report and feedback received, will be making a submission to the UPR. What we have noticed is civil society members as well as colleagues from media have actively been speaking to the UPR review and have made submissions over the first and second cycle, and this is something that needs to continue in this cycle just to keep the pressure and the awareness of what's happening in Timor. I will also like to draw your attention to the Sustainable Development Goals. All countries in Southeast Asia, including Timor, have signed up and ratified it. And Timor has submitted a voluntary report in 2019. Asia Center has also been looking at this area in the context of Southeast Asia. We look at two specific goals, SDG 9C, which is infrastructure development and access to the internet, and also goal 16.10 that looks at access to information and fundamental freedoms. Our initial assessment is because of COVID-19, much progress along the SDGs have been thwarted or regressed, especially around goal 16.10 related to access to information and fundamental freedoms. So that's something to think about as well as we try to find a way out of this pandemic and put things back on track. So next, we are going to end the poll, the previous poll now, and we have a couple more polls. So thank you very much. We had 100% answer on that there should be increased protection for young girls and women against online sexual harassment. And we'll just share the results with you now. Next, to highlight for those who are in this space that Timor needs to improve the submission of reports to the various instruments, especially the ICCPR. Yes, we know there are challenges in terms of capacity and resources to submit this, but one of our recommendation is where we ask development partners to provide more support, so colleagues in Timor are able to muster capacity to submit these reports. Next, we look at special procedures or special rapporteurs. A range of rapporteurs have visited Timor, from displaced persons to things dealing with extreme poverty, minority issues, and indigenous people. This is to recognize also Timor has an open invitation for special rapporteurs. So persons, mandate holders related to privacy and freedom of expressions should be encouraged to also visit Timor and to present, their assessment of developments in Timor. Next, we'll look at the legal dimension. Here, Timor, which has been, party to almost all the international convention, aligns its constitution to international standards, and there are clear expressions within Article 14 and 41 in relation to freedom of expression and the press, information and social communications. That is clearly stated. However, the challenge really is the development of new laws or the proposal of new laws that may challenge these alignments and principles stated in international law as well as the Constitution. We have seen challenges previously related to media laws where license to exercise the profession, the duty and functions of journalists, and the approval of credentials by the Press Council was seen as possible inhibitions. There's also been, examples of violations or incidents related to the penalty that has been put on to journalists, and this has been very much in play. But our focus really now is on internet freedom. So I'll go on to draft laws that we have heard. The first one is the Penal Code amendment to the portion on criminal defamation. The penalties have been put up as 3 years and $10,000 and that's quite prohibitive. We know that it has met with consistent and strong pushback. And as it stands earlier this year, it has not been adopted. And I'll stop there because we have a poll to get your assessment. And most recently, just days ago, there was discussion related to the cybercrime law. Again, we want to get your opinion in terms of where this would be. So we'll just now start with our poll. We want to know, is there a possibility that the defamation law will be brought back? We know it's been parked. We know there have been good discussion and pushback. Civil society, the media workers and associations, international partner friends, different people in the political establishment. Not everybody in the political establishment agrees to these things. But what is the feeling on the ground? Would it sneak back? I mean, it's not entirely taken away. Would it sneak back, or are we confident it's parked indefinitely? Now, the initial indication we have is 90% of you out there responding feel that that it will be brought back. and only 10% is confident. So that already, are the warning bells in terms of if we step back and look at what is happening in the rest of Southeast Asia. On the same vein, we will now go to the next poll, again, just to get your sense of where it is. This time, the question is the recently concluded debate or discussion around the cybercrime law. Once again, in your opinion, what are the chances that the cybercrime law will be passed? I know this is very recent discussion. It doesn't have that history and length of pushback that the defamation law has had. But what is the feeling on the ground in relation to cybercrime law? It's got very, very interesting provisions that also cover privacy and data protection. Not as good as we think international standards would afford it, but more in a little while. Again, we want to get a sense of your thoughts. And I'm going to pause here for a bit. There's a colleague who's just raised hand, and perhaps we would hear from the colleague is Roberto. Roberto, the floor is yours. Please feel free to interject. Over to you, Robert.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Roberto de Souza. I'm leading the agency for ICT in Timor-Leste. So I think this is a very interesting conference. I do not have anything in general to be shared with regards to the previous slide, while some informations might need to be contested with. However, the cybercrime law, specifically on the data protections and privacy, the government is actually currently working on these particular legislations on data protections and privacy. So it is a separate legislations not built in within the cybercrime law draft, which now under the discussions at the National Parliament. We are hoping the data protections and privacy law, might be under another discussions with the National Parliament by hopefully we estimated by the end of 2021. So this is what I can share with the Asia Center here, and then more information as we go. If time allow, I would be able to elaborate more on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Robert, for your kind intervention. We accept the update you received, and also we welcome where you have spotted anomalies in information. We'll reach out to you. We are happy to quote or reference the appropriate sources. So we look forward to interact and respond with you. This is a collaborative exercise, and we hope to be able to keep the dialogue going. So thank you, Roberto. I'll continue, and just also, Roberto, just to give you a heads up, we have some views and ideas on data protection. So as we go along the presentation and the slide is available, please feel free to jump in to respond. We would love to hear your views. So I'll keep going. We will now just share the results of the previous poll. Will the cybercrime law be passed? Again, we have about 85%, with the caveat, the numbers are not very large in terms of sample size, but still we have 11 people who feel that the cybercrime law will be passed and 2 persons no. And that's also a question of sentiment. So just springboarding from the previous discussion on data protection and privacy, we see that the Constitution has already flagged positively to honor the right to privacy and also access to personal data, and also be able to, update personal data, especially if it's in public records. But I would like to just signpost this idea that one of the challenges, and really, our presentation is in the context of Southeast Asia. So, we cannot see it in isolation. We will have to see it in terms of a trend around the region and of a regional grouping that Timor-Leste has applied to be part of. One of the challenges we have seen, and this has been especially poignant in the context of the COVID-19 surveillance and contact tracing of people to reduce infection, is the collection of data of people's personal data as well as movement records. Now, what is challenging is the lack of oversight in inter-ministry sharing of data. So once the data is collected, there have been incidences where it becomes a free-for-all because the proper protection for inter-ministry sharing is not there. There have been incidences also where such information that has been gathered through this process has been used against, criminals. For example, in Singapore, when they introduced contact tracing, there was a lot of assurances given that the data would be ring-fenced and be, with the ministry concerned and for the purposes of contact tracing and reducing infections, and will be expunged after the use is no longer necessary. However, it later came to light the police had access to this information to investigate murder cases. So this is the challenge. I'll give one other example, and this is drawing from Myanmar. In Myanmar, following the coup, particular provisions to data protection were rescinded from the Telecommunications Act in order to allow the military to persecute the protesters and so on. So in thinking about data protection and privacy, and I'm very glad to hear that, there are considerations for later this year for discussion, very timely, very in line with global standards, that when we discuss privacy and data protection, do we have the correct oversight mechanisms to ensure privacy is really maintained and it's in line with the principles that the Constitution provisions already articulate. So I'll park it there and I'll keep going, and anytime any friend or colleague would like to interject, you're most welcome. I'll keep going. So again, a poll. Does Timor-Leste, we're going to just share the results from the previous poll and jump to this one, poll number 4. Does Timor-Leste need to strengthen its data protection? Well, and we've heard possibly via a specific data protection act. So again, friends and colleagues out there, let us know how you feel about that, and perhaps also let us know what is the state of discussion. Again, we do understand in these difficult times of internet connectivity and the inability to meet face to face, we are limited in terms of the resources on which to build this report. So if any of you out there feel there are documents and information we need to consult, please reach out, and we'll be happy to accurately reflect the latest developments in any of these concerns. So again, we have, data size is small. We have about 12 people who have answered this latest question, and we have 100% saying that data protection needs to be strengthened in Timor-Leste. So not very much left to go. So I'll just have a few more slides and a few more minutes where I will slowly, wrap up the presentation. So if I can just get on to the next slide. So we've been building up to this, and I want to say, to get us to think about how, internet freedoms can be impacted, and in relation to Timor-Leste, where can we strengthen and protect internet freedoms? Many things are on the way, in particular, improvement on internet coverage in the country. We've had the latest update some months ago on the optic fiber network. If things get on track and they're well implemented, this will certainly increase connectivity, it will increase internet stability, and with this, we hope also more players in the in terms of internet service providers would bring in competition and also to bring down the cost. Again, drawing from the examples in the region, drawing from countries that had very low internet penetration. And I would just, once again, bring an example from Southeast Asia. In Myanmar, until 10 years ago, not even 10, maybe 7 years ago, before the telecom sector was liberalized, truly liberalized, a SIM card was $250. But that has tumbled down tremendously. So if there is competition in terms of internet service providers, we can expect the cost of internet to come down. And this will also contribute to freedoms in terms of having access to the internet. Next, much discussed within the country, issues related to defamation law and cybercrime law. There have been arguments that perhaps existing laws, elements in the civil code can be used. And we have seen there has been pushback in terms of the defamation law. There have been discussion on the cybercrime law very, very recently. And also to signpost that there will be discussions about, privacy and data protection. But we can see the sentiment that these, will be passed is there. And if we look in comparison to the rest of Southeast Asia, they have also moved to control in this area. It's not so much that the law is there, it's often used politically to silence opposition. That's the nub of it. And here I would take the opportunity also to highlight to colleagues one of Asia Center's report. We will send the link shortly to you. This report is called COVID-19 and its impact on democracy and human rights in Southeast Asia. There we map how laws such as fake news laws have been used politically to silence opposition. When we say opposition, usually they are critical of political figures and government officials who may have mismanaged in policy terms. One of the things that comes out is really the the politicians and government officials are very, very sensitive to comments, and because they are sensitive and prickly, they need to respond with laws to deal with that criticism. So that's something to kind of look at. Number three, we mentioned earlier about children, young girls, women being disproportionately targeted online. Conversations with friends in Timor always leads to this challenge and problem. We need more public education as well as awareness of internet safety here, and this should also be a matter of priority because the risk becomes wider when connectivity and affordability increases. Finally, in any move towards privacy and data protection, we will have to look at clauses that actually protect the data, and that there is, oversight in inter-ministry sharing, as well as that it's not used against those who may be, raising concerns over policy matters. Here, it's also important to think about elements within the law that allow internet shutdowns and the throttling of internet speeds. Now, this is a new approach being taken by some countries in the region. And the question really is, as you evolve, both in terms of connectivity and the legal framework, does Timor want to go down the same line as the rest of the ASEAN grouping, or at least the majority of ASEAN? So I'll come really now to the final slide, which is really an articulation from the previous slide coming to the impact. For those of us who are in this space, this is nothing new. We all are very familiar with the key recommendations. For instance, to increase competitive telecommunication market, simplify the licensing regime, look at taxation and other fees that may allow improvement in the digital economy. Part of the push for connectivity is also to improve the economy, the digital economy in all countries, Timor included, and it should yield the right positive results. The defamation law, there's been active campaigning for the law not to be adopted and also to be dealt more specifically through the civil law. This is something that's already happening. The cyber law also, to some extent, should be focus on citizens in terms of cyber attacks and cyberbullying, and not to be used for prosecute political criticism. One particular behavior that you can see across the region is that when it comes to such laws to hamper the freedoms of the internet, often these are championed and articulated by people who feel they have been offended by criticism that has been leveled online. Us being based in Thailand, we see it almost every day, where key government and political figures are easily riled when things with vaccine rollout or rise in infection rates, border control are called out. So we need to recognize that sometimes these laws are not articulated for the sake of the community, but rather it is for the few. So I think that balance, need to be ensured, and the motivations and from where these, articulation origin should also be properly noted. And again, coming back to the safety of young people, girls and women online, education in schools, media literacy is key, something that can be rolled out at a national curriculum, and also to raise awareness about internet safety, because by just raising awareness of this situation, that's already a good start. But the key challenge again is gathering that political will and resources to implement. And last but not least, to implement a progressive and comprehensive data protection that puts the persons and individual at the center of the protection, and to ensure that is proper oversight in terms of how the data is shared within the bureaucracy and used. So last but not least, I will now, I guess it's time for me to pause and see if there are any reactions or feedback from the friends and colleagues who may be online. Please feel free. Okay, so Roberto is here. We'll just have you on in a moment. Yes. The floor is yours, Roberto.
Once again, thank you for the opportunity, and I'm glad that being part of this webinar. I would like to later on, when time permit or in the future arrangement, specifically to share with the Asia Center the initiative, particularly on the recommendations of number 6, that something that we can share with the Asia Center later on, if that would provide you more information on, to give you up-to-date initiative on the data protections and privacy, and also that issue to align with international or national or regional guidelines or standard, something that we are more than happy to share with the team later on or in the future. Just have to find a way of the mechanisms to communicate to each other. And also perhaps some component, for instance, on the ICT. Can we please go back to the recommendation slide?
Yes, yeah. Number 2, were you looking at the recommendation?
The number 2 on the ICT sector, to revisit the ICT sector taxations and other fee to find the right balance between the need for revenue and the digital economy, something that we might be able to share with you down the line, some information we have on that. And number 4, we might have our own thought about that, but something that we'll have to discuss internally. Then perhaps we will be able to give your opinion on that, the cyber crime law as well. So number 6, number 2, and possibly number 4.
Thank you, Roberto. That's very kind and generous of you. We look forward to reaching out to you and establishing a channel of communication. On our part, we also want to be collaborative and positive and productive and constructive. So we will also be happy to share our draft report and welcome your comments. And we can, of course, have our perspectives on it. So I really look very much to remain engaged because this is a collaborative exercise. And of course, later on, when opportunities with the pandemic allows, I look forward to also, interacting with colleagues from the ICT department. Asia Center also works with parliaments and parliamentary networks. And if there are opportunities to share views and to exchange thoughts, these are also very much welcome. So once again, Roberto, thank you for your kind offer and interaction. I just want to check if there were other comments or questions. We saw something that may have popped up. Okay, here we have a question or opinion whether there is a guest speaker from Timor-Leste. What we had done was actually to interact with a few colleagues in Timor-Leste via Zoom and email to get their input. At this stage, we just wanted to, do a first engagement of the very preliminary draft. We do plan to have a launch of the report when it's a little bit more ready. And at that point, we will be inviting response and commentaries, and we want to have a nice cross-section of voices from Timor to be able to interact with the more fuller version of the report. So thank you very much for the suggestion. This is really very important for us, and we will take it on board when we actually launch the report. We have a target date of about a month or so. So thank you very much for the comments. We do have a little bit of time, and I see something else had popped up on the Q&A box. Could we just have a quick look to see if there were anything else? So if there is anything else, we are going to be hanging on for the next 5 minutes. I know it might also be late in Timor now. We are 2 hours behind Timor-Leste. As a way of wrap up, I want to just say about the work that Asia Center does. We primarily work on human rights issue. We take an evidence-based approach. We work on human rights mechanisms as it relates to Southeast Asia. So we work on the Universal Periodic Review. We work on national human rights institutions, and we also look at business and human rights, especially in relation to ICT companies and technology companies. So that's one cluster of work. The other cluster of work is around freedom of expression. We look at academic freedoms, we look at press freedoms, and internet freedoms. In internet freedoms, we look at a few things. We look at hate speech, we look at fake news legislation, we look at disinformation, and then finally, we look at the SDGs, in particular SDG 9C and 16.10 as it relates to internet freedom. So this is broadly what Asia Center does in terms of research, and we usually present our findings at conferences. We interact quite closely with parliamentarians and also INGOs and civil society. So with that, I just saw some other indication. Yes. For those of you, who missed this opportunity, we will have the session on YouTube. So you can feel free to share with your friends. And Roberto, I've got your details, so I'll be reaching out to you and sharing information as needed. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for your kind attendance this afternoon. And I wish you very well. Wish you good internet freedoms in Timor-Leste, stable and in the future, affordable connectivity. So from all of us, we'll just zoom out the camera. So you'll have a sense of the team that has been working on the report and presentation today. So from all of us, a big thank you for your attendance this afternoon. And let's remain connected. Once again, please follow us on social media, and we hope to be in touch soon. Best wishes and obrigado.